for helping provide this debate tonight. We have the United Way, the Hinckley Institute of Politics from U of U, the Utah PTA, and the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools, and also the Deseret News. Our host tonight is the Wallace Stegner Academy, their West Valley City campus. So thank you so much for providing this great venue for us tonight. Tonight we have candidates, Matt Hymas, who is the incumbent, and challenger Deborah Cottrell, and we are so happy to have them here to ask questions. So the format of our debate tonight will proceed as follows. First, we'll have opening statements, which will be 60 seconds each, and then we'll have a series of questions that were prepared by our partners and our that are providing the debate tonight. And then we will, those questions, you'll have 90 seconds to answer those. And if you need a 30-second rebuttal, you can just let me know and we can also do that. The second 30 minutes of the evening tonight, we will be taking questions from our live audience here and also online for anybody who is watching the live stream from home. So that way we can get kind of see what the people that are in your area are interested in. So if the online audience has questions, you can put them in the chat, and Gina James from the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools is watching that for us. Our timekeeper, Obaid, will let you know, candidates, when you have 30 seconds left and when you have 10 seconds left and when it is time to be done. So we appreciate you paying attention to that. So we worked it out ahead of time, and Matt is going to go first to introduce himself. So you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I'm Matt Hymas, and I'm running to continue on the state school board. I appreciate the sponsors of this event and the opportunity to be here. I just want to share a little bit about myself in this brief moment here. I love education. I want everybody to know that I love education. I knew this from a young age. I watched my father teach in the Granite School District. He went through some ups and downs, and I thought, I love that. Additionally, I love to learn. I love to see how things work, and I love to continue to learn. I believe that learning is a lifelong process, not just for me, but for our students as well. And so one of the things that I want to continue to do on this state school board is push for academic success for all students so that they have a better understanding of learning and create a love of lifelong learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hymas. Deborah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Amber, and the PTA and everybody else who's involved in sponsoring this tonight. Thank you for the folks who are here live. It's good to see you all, and the folks watching online. It's good for you to be participating in this way. I've just introduced myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Deborah. Hey,
oh, sorry.
All good, all good. And I'm a board certified public teacher. I've been teaching in classrooms for 15 years now, and it's what I live and breathe and love to do. Thank you. I'm also a veteran. I've got 25 years service in the National Guard, so I have some leadership skills. I know how to get things done, bring people together in complicated, messy situations. And education these days is a little bit complicated and sometimes really messy. So I'd like to bring those skills to serve in this role. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a set of prepared questions tonight, and we'll start on those. First, you'll have 90 seconds to do your response to those questions. And then if you need to do a rebuttal, just let me know, and we'll give you 30 seconds for that also. Okay, here we go. Let's see. So Deborah, I believe you'll be first.
Okay.
So first question, what will your guiding principles be for decision-making on the State Board of Education?
Thank you for the question. As far as guiding principles, the first question is always going to be what's best for students and their families. That's where everything starts. That's where everything ends. And the second one, as an extension of that, really is what strengthens schools for increased student achievement now, and then strengthens schools for the future. As the world is constantly changing and technology is evolving, we need to be proactive, making sure that we're ready for what's coming. So that's the second piece. And then the third one, I'm going to ask this question. Are all the perspectives represented that need to be in the conversation? And if they're not, I'm going to go find the people that we need to hear from to make sure those perspectives are considered. Whether it's rural charter schools, online schools, your traditional public schools in a variety of formats. I want to hear from the people who are going to be affected by the decisions the board makes. And that includes the local boards as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, so what will your guiding principles for decision-making on the State Board of Education be?
Thank you. My guiding principles are quite simple. It's academics. That's where I'm pushing to get back to. For too long, we focused on various programs. We haven't done what we said we would do as a state school board. We are here to educate. We know that parents have a responsibility and that we have a responsibility. And when parents send their kids to school, is to learn how to read, write, do arithmetic. There's other things involved, yes, but everything has to fall underneath that umbrella of academic excellence. That's my aim. That's what I've been pushing for. That's what I will continue to push for, is, again, academic excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Second question. The Utah State Board of Education vision, and Matt, you'll be first this time,
Thank you.
was updated in January 2024 and now says the vision is, quote, academic and organizational excellence in Utah education by the following: participate in civic responsibilities, uphold and strengthen our constitutional republic, provide for themselves and their families, engage in post-secondary opportunities, pursue personal goals, and embody strong moral and social values. Do you agree with this vision? Do you think it's missing something, or do you think it's complete? How do you feel about the vision?
It's still in progress. We're still working on it. But yes, I voted to accept. First off, I was part of the process of changing the vision to this. And again, just as you read, academic and organizational excellence in Utah education. And the only reason organizational is in there, for me anyway, is because the USBE has certain roles and we want to make sure that we help with the organization. But academic, in my opinion, again, I'm not going to push this, or I'm going to push this way farther than maybe I should, but academics is the key word here. So academic excellence in Utah education. And what that does is that drives everything underneath, or everything that the USBE does has to be underneath that umbrella. We have to have a vision of academic excellence, and the organizational excellence as well. That comes again within, how is this going to help our students academically? It's not going to be worth the time if we can't help our students achieve. They're our future, right? I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. They're our future. We can't afford to just teach them to be nice and do all these things and that's it. We have to teach them to be ready to come into the world and take over. Quite frankly, I'd like to retire someday under competent people. So thank you.
Thank you. Deborah, let me read that again for you, because
Sure.
it's kind of long. The USBE vision was updated in January 2024 and now says the vision is, quote, academic and organizational excellence in Utah education by the following: participate in civic responsibilities, uphold and strengthen our constitutional republic, provide for themselves and their families, engage in post-secondary opportunities, pursue personal goals, and embody strong moral and social values. Do you agree with the vision, or do you feel like there's something missing or something that you would want to add?
So first off, I think it's important to recognize that there's a difference between a mission statement and a vision statement. And a mission is what we do. That's what we do right now. That is our job. And academic excellence absolutely should be our job. And I agree with Matt on that. As far as a vision, that's what we want to become. That's where we're headed. And I think most of what's in the vision should be a mission. That should be what we're doing right now, not just what we're working towards, but there's definitely areas that we can do better. And we talk about academic excellence and being in the schools. I know, because I teach these kids, that too many of them drop out. The schools aren't meeting everybody's needs with academic excellence. And that's because for too long, we've been focused on college for everybody. And college is great. I went to college. I had a great time in college. And it's a great option for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody. Our students that are more concrete thinkers, that want to work with their hands, they don't feel successful. And we need to make sure that we have pathways in the schools now that they can feel successful. We need to adjust some of our course offerings. We need to adjust some of our graduation requirements so that they can see a future through school, so they have a reason to stay. Why don't we offer courses like math for the trades, where we can connect them to apprenticeship pathways so that they can see a way to a future while they're in school and have a reason to stay in school? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, this is kind of an odd format for us that are sitting up here because we're talking to each other, but we're also talking to the audience, but we're also talking to the Zoom link. So it's a little tricky. So I am not offended if you don't look at me when you answer me. That's totally fine. Okay, so
Take 30.
yes. So Matt would like a 30-second rebuttal for this one.
I don't know if it's necessarily a rebuttal, but I want to point out the fact, if a student can't read, none of this matters. If a student can't write, none of this matters. And if a student can't problem solve through basic mathematics and beyond, when they start getting into this logical concepts coming together in middle school, none of this matters. Academics has to be first. Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So I agree. But the fact of the matter is I have students coming to my classes who have just got to the country and can't read or write in English. And so we need supports at the secondary level that can help them see success. And if they can't do it in English, then we need a way that they can be successful, because we only have them for however long we have them. If we can get them when they're in kindergarten, great. But if not, we still need to be able to serve all students.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. And I really like this one. There's tension between the various levels of educational governance. And Deborah, this is for your first this time.
Okay.
So discussions about whether decisions should be made from a top-down or a bottom-up approach are occurring. So which issues, standards, or maybe curricula do you believe should be addressed at the different areas? We have the state board level, we have the local board level, we have an individual school level, and we have the individual classroom level. Where do you think the appropriate place is for some of those items?
Okay, answering that in 90 seconds is fun. The state board's level is to create broad policy that meets legislative intent and the requirements and needs of students. But it has to be broad enough that schools in various formats in various places can still tailor it to their needs and their format, right? We have to acknowledge that the state board can't micromanage everything. The legislature certainly can't micromanage everything. Local control as a rule is the best because it's closest to the people and best understands their needs. However, there are some broad things like, constitutional rights that are not negotiable. It's just, what does it look like in this format? So there has to be a balance there, and there have to be serious people willing to have serious conversations to tease that out. But the teacher in the classroom knows their students best and how to tailor curriculum. So we can't have scripted curriculum that's going to meet everybody's needs, because it just doesn't work. So that's where we have to make sure that as we're making decisions at the highest level, they're as broad as possible, so that at each level stepping down, they can get more narrow and more tailored to meet local needs most appropriately.
Thank you. Now, let me read that again for you. There's tension between various levels of educational governance. Discussions about whether decisions should be made from the top down or a bottom up approach are occurring. So which issues, standards, or curricula do you think should be addressed in each area? We have the state board level, the local board, at the individual school level, or even down to the individual classroom.
Thank you. I am a big proponent of local control. You may or may not know that the responsibility of the USBE is general supervision and control. This is what I take into my mind as I'm looking over a policy or I'm looking over a rule change. Is this general supervision and control, or is this a dictatorship, right? Are we going in and saying, you must do this? Now, sometimes there are things of that nature. And a lot of times those come from lawmakers. The USBE, we're about in January, we're going to go up to the Hill every week. We're going to listen to lawmakers. In March, when that's over, we're going to be scrambling to make rule to match law. And that's what we're going to do. And some of those things admittedly step on the toes of local control. And I'll give you an example. Recently, I can't remember which one it is, SB 127, I believe. talked about curriculum for early literacy. So you have the legislatures who are saying, we have a real reading problem here. And you know what? They're right. And what they did was they said, you need specific curriculum. And we said, hold on a second, that's a local control issue. And so we push back and say, instead of maybe pushing curriculum, let's push the science of reading teaching. Let's teach teachers how to teach best practices. A lot of teach in one sentence. But those are the types of things we're looking at here. Local control, and always remember that the USBE has general supervision and control. Thank you.
Take 30 seconds.
Sure.
So I agree with that. Absolutely. The legislature does like to use a sledgehammer where a scalpel is more appropriate. And we've seen that with a number of things and where they're passing over 100 education related bills every year. Things have gotten way out of control. Like the Superintendent's Association has asked, they need to pause this. They need to calm down. Let us try and implement the things that they've asked us to do, and also give us a chance to help them fix the things that they got wrong, like the school safety bill. There's a lot of issues with that too.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and it looks like Matt, you'll be going first this time. What does equity mean to you? What does it not mean?
Well, the equity question. Goodness. Quite frankly, equity is providing all students an opportunity. That's how I look at it. And I don't care what race you are, what nationality, how much money you have. If you need help, you need help. And what has happened is we've said, if you fit in this box, you need help. When we don't really know that, do we? We don't know if you need help if you fit in the box. So stop trying to put people in a box. If you need help, you need help. That's equity to me, is we have available resources to help families and students who need help. Inequity is saying, because you're this nationality, because you only make this much money, you need my help. That's not equity, in my opinion.
All right, so I'm glad we get to talk about equity, and I did not set this up, just for the record, because this is actually one of the issues where Matt and I disagreed when I reached out to him earlier, this last year. And he's been very responsive about everything else that I've talked to him about. So I'm grateful for his service and his responsiveness. But on equity, there was a lot of debate about equity. They passed a rule for equity. He voted to repeal the rule, and I had a heartburn with that because it's a controversial word, because it's been politicized by some people in the legislature and the national level. And that's very unfortunate, because equity it's meeting student needs. That's what it is. And that's what we're all supposed to be doing as teachers, but not every teacher understands the meaning of the word and how to do it. And so having some training and some guidance from the state board would have been very, very helpful and appropriate. So I was disappointed to see that taken back by the legislature. It wasn't overturned by the board. So we're differentiating to meet student needs. And if you're a language learner, that means you need support. If you are struggling socially or emotionally, then you need different supports. And it's identifying student needs and making sure that they're met. This is especially important when we're talking about our special education students and students with 504 plans for a variety of reasons. And it's a struggle, because there are a lot of needs. And if teachers don't understand what equity means and how to do it, then we're probably not doing it right. And that's not right for kids.
Can I just share a quick experience? I'm an educator as well. I don't know if you guys know this. I sat down with a student in high school when I was in teaching or administering in West Valley. Student's last name was Ramirez. I'm sitting down with her, English language learner, right? She says she's had to take these different tests as an English language learner, put in different classes from this school that she was in. I said, you speak and write fantastic. What is the problem? She said, my last name's Ramirez. That's unacceptable. That's not why we put people in programs. We help those who need help. Thank you.
Okay, Deborah, you are first with this next one. So this year, public education has the possibility of some significant funding changes due to a couple of constitutional amendments that will be on the ballot in November, Amendment A and Amendment B. Do you believe that our K-12 schools are adequately funded in Utah, and what is your position on those amendments?
Okay, do I believe K-12 education is adequately funded? Absolutely not. And as far as those two amendments, Amendment A, we'll see what the courts have to say about that being on the ballot in November. I'm deeply troubled by the legislature's policy of continually cutting funding that should go to public education, which is causing infighting amongst education stakeholders who are desperate, starving for cash, who otherwise would be fully funded. You know, the income tax has been dedicated to education for about 75 years because Utah has a commitment to its children and making sure they get a quality education. But over the last 5 or 10 years or so, we've had years of the tax cut every year. And that means at the legislative level, they're cutting the income taxes, which is giving your high earners a tax break and forcing local taxing entities, your local school boards, to raise property taxes, which hurts those who can bear it the least, the most. That's been their policy for the last 5 or 10 years, and it's been devastating to education. So I don't trust them with Amendment A. As far as Amendment B, which will increase land trust funds that are administered through community councils, I fully support Amendment B because that'll give every school a little bit more money for their local needs, whether that be another playground aid to keep an eye on kids in the mornings or another aid in the classroom to help special education teachers. Amendment B is fantastic.
Thank you. Would you like me to reread that question?
No, but if I don't answer it, you just have to tell me and give me another 90.
Okay. Basically, what do you think about the amendments?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, it's my thought that we don't have a funding problem here in Utah. We do have a spending problem. We have just way too many programs that I believe are just taking money from the taxpayers and not doing enough good for kids. That's where I see the issue. Now let's talk about, so you ask about funding. Do we have enough money? Hey, who doesn't love more money, right? I would always accept more money. You want to give me more money? I'll take it. Unfortunately, it comes at the taxpayer expense. So I think first we need to open up what we're looking at or what we're spending and say, do we really need that? Right? That's my first. Now, Amendment A. I know this is like not taking a position, but here's the thing I know about lawmakers. I've worked with them for 4 years now. They value education. Quite frankly, I don't care where the money comes from, but I need the money to come. And they know that the money needs to come. So if they see something that I don't see, and clearly they do, then they want to put this on the ballot. And I support the voice of the people. That's where I am on Amendment A. Wherever we end up, I fully believe that the lawmakers will continue to fund. We are the largest budget in Utah. They'll continue to fund public education. Amendment B, again, who wouldn't want an increase, right? But it does say, I think, just to point this out, it states that it wants to increase the limit. It doesn't say it's going to increase, just increase the limit. So I'm for Amendment B, but that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we're going to take more money from the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's go with this one. Okay, and Matt, you'll be first this time. So currently the state of Utah does not have a way to know how many children in the state are homeschooled. Would you support an initiative that would help the state have a census of these students? Are you in favor of using public funds for private and homeschools? And if so, do you believe that accountability measures should be put in place for the use of those funds?
So you're essentially asking me about the voucher bill, which has so lovingly been referred to. When we discussed this up on the Hill, there was this vote as board members to say whether we supported this bill or not. And I voted to support it because I believe that school choice is important. Of course, I believe that. I run a charter school. But I believe that homeschoolers and private schoolers also pay taxes. And so I asked the legislator, well, where's this money coming from? Is it coming from public ed? No, this is our money that we want to get back to the people. Who am I to stop them? Homeschoolers need help too sometimes. Private school is difficult. And it, I'm sorry to say that sometimes our public education system does not offer a private school education. So sometimes people make options. So yes, I support school choice. I do hope that they come up with a better system, quite frankly. It is hard to watch millions of dollars just go out unknowingly and then to say it's doing good. Well, we don't necessarily know that for sure. I would love to see that. But of course, this isn't a public ed system, right? This is something that the legislator brought forth and said, this is what we want to do for our people. So anyway, I do support school choice. I do support homeschoolers getting help as needed and private schoolers.
So Deborah, for you, I'll just repeat it.
Okay.
Currently, the state of Utah does not have a way to know how many children in the state are homeschooled. Would you support an initiative that would help the state have a census of those students? Are you in favor of using public funds for private and homeschools? And if so, would you think that accountability measures should be put into place for use of public funds?
So that's like 3 or 4 questions
I
in
know.
one, but
I
I'm
know, they're
happy
all
to take that one.
related. Talk to me about those things.
Of course. So as far as homeschooling, first of all, I have a lot of family and friends who have been homeschooled by very well-educated parents and have turned out to be very well-educated and successful adults. So I fully support homeschool by people who are capable of homeschooling. But after seeing the case of Gavin Peterson from up in Weber County, where the poor kid was pulled out of public school because the lunch ladies were feeding him and then having him starve to death, that is not acceptable. And so I would absolutely support a census of homeschoolers to know that our children are being educated in some way, and perhaps, having them come in once a year for a reading assessment so that the folks who see homeschooling as a positive, viable option have data to support it, in addition to anecdotal experiences, because I think homeschooling is a great option for a lot of families. But there's also some problems, as we've seen with what happened to Gavin. As far as vouchers and accountability, there's no question the voucher money is coming out of public education money. It's coming out of the income tax, and it should be going to the public schools. So I have a problem with that as far as accountability, because a portfolio really isn't accountability as far as that goes. I'm really glad that there are, levels of people that can receive the money and that's tracked in some way. If we're going to do vouchers, which the scale up data is devastating that they aren't successful. Your successful schools like Waterford aren't going to accept that money. We're going to see devastating losses, and those students are going to struggle at the expense of the taxpayer. And so I have a real problem with public money going for private schooling and private homeschooling that there's no accountability on. That's not being fiscally responsible. And I have a real issue with that. So if we're going to do it, we need accountability on how those students are learning. And we also need accountability on how that money is being spent, because that's our job and public schools have to do it. So anybody that's accepting public money should have to do it too.
Yes.
I asked the legislator specifically, if this bill doesn't pass, do we get the money? The answer was no, we don't get the money. So I want you to understand, when I ask these questions, there is fiscal responsibility in there. This is not just do whatever you want. This is to help students with their money. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's almost 7:30, so I'm going to ask one more and then we're going to go to audience questions, okay? So do we do special education well in Utah? What would you do to improve it? Deborah, you're first.
Do we do special education well in Utah? I'm going to say we need to do a lot better. And the reason I say we need to do a lot better is because what I see in my school is we have a really hard time getting and keeping high quality special education teachers. So oftentimes these are folks who are coming in without the proper training and education, without the proper skills, and they're trying to learn on the job. And there's a time and a place for that. But our students with the greatest needs, having the least prepared teachers, is really not good for kids. It's not good for their peers. It's not good for the teachers. It's not good for the school. And so we need to do a much better job of making it appealing to be a special education teacher. The caseloads are too high. We need to make sure that they have the aides and assistants that they need to do their jobs well, to meet file file requirements, because there's a ton of paperwork involved, and there's a lot that we need to do better for that, for those kids.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I truly respect what our educators are doing, and they have their hands full. I mean, there's no question about it. And it really does take working with educator and parent, or I should say family, to make sure that the needs are met of students within the special ed program. I will also say that there is so much special ed law that comes federally, which we can't avoid. And then the state has theirs, rule and law and policy. And then the LEA has their own rules and policies within there. And it's just crushing. It's crushing. And at my school, the highest turnover is in special education. And we're doing everything we can to offer support. And I hope that the families are not feeling the same pressure, but I know it's a united effort. Now, back to the original question, are we doing it well? I think we are doing it as well as we can, but obviously there's room for growth and there's room for improvement. Now, there's many parents out there who would say, they're not doing right by my kid. And I would say, let's continue to work together. Don't give up. Don't leave. Let us continue to work together. But overall, we're doing a fairly decent job.
Thank you.
Can I add to that as well?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't mind. We also do have for students with very complex needs, we have the Carson Smith Scholarship. We have the Special Needs Opportunities Scholarship. We have these additional funds that are available for students who are not well served in the public schools, and that's not advertised well enough. And it's something that I think we could also improve on to reduce some of the burden. The teachers that we do have are doing a phenomenal job, but they get burned out really quickly because the demands are so intense. So we need to do better.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are going to move to audience questions, both the audience here in person and also we've had some online questions come in. So, Matt, you'll be first. Here we go. Now that all complaints about inappropriate curriculum must be forwarded to USBE and UPPAC, how do you see USBE's role in policing the line between appropriate but challenging materials versus truly inappropriate materials?
I appreciate that question. There's been a lot of work on the USBE level to make sure that inappropriate, not only curriculum, but teaching. And not a lot of times it's not the curriculum. A lot of times it's the small, and I mean small percentage of teachers that kind of go off script, if you will. I think I just want to clarify, right? I want to make sure that the public knows that the majority of our teachers are doing amazing things in the classroom. But as you know, it only takes one instance, and it doesn't even have to be in our state, one instance to cause panic and upheaval. What we've done at the state level is within the rule, we've said you cannot politicize your classroom. You just can't do that. That's against educator standards, right? So you can't go in pushing a social agenda or a political agenda. You cannot encourage students to choose or switch gender identities or sexual preferences. That's not appropriate. And the curriculum would follow. And not only has the board created these educator standards, but law doesn't allow it, Utah law. So there are avenues if parents see that and they push that up to UPAC. UPAC standing for, I'll butcher it, Utah Professional Practices Advisory Committee. I didn't butcher it. I nailed it. And then they investigate and they say, what do we need to do to either remove or correct so that our students can have a solid education that is not pushed by an individual's agenda. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Now that all complaints about inappropriate curriculum must be forwarded to USBE and UPPAC, how do you see USBE's role in policing the line between appropriate but challenging materials versus truly inappropriate materials?
Well, honestly, I hope the USBE's role in this is minimal because all of these questions really should be handled at the lowest level first, right? We should be having a conversation. If a parent has a concern, They should be having a conversation with the teacher first so that an issue can be addressed if there is in fact an issue. Sometimes the issue is a non-issue. I was personally attacked by parents not that long ago, just a couple of years, because of something that their child said had happened in my classroom. And when we sorted all the mess out, unfortunately, the child lied. And that got resolved. It didn't need to go up, although we did get administration involved. If working it out with the teacher doesn't work, then parents should take the concern to the administration. So the administration can have the conversation with the teacher. And if the teacher's not doing right, then can provide the corrective training and remediation action if appropriate. And really, we need to talk about administration and having accountability for administrators when they're struggling teachers, because right now everything's put on the teachers. And then the state legislature is trying to micromanage teachers, and that just doesn't work. Okay, if the administration doesn't resolve it, then it should go to the district. And after the district, then it should end up at UPAC. If somebody goes straight to UPAC first, I hope that UPAC is also redirecting them back down to the school level so that those conversations can be had at the local level to address the problem at the most appropriate level, which is always closest to the incident. Student and teacher, parent, administrator, district, and then USBE. Thank you.
Okay, next question, and Deborah, you're first this time.
Okay.
If you are elected, how would you collaborate with teachers?
Well, since I am a teacher, collaborating with teachers is something that I do all the time already. But I've made a point of reaching out to district leaders in other districts where I don't teach and teacher leaders in other districts where I don't teach. And I also have an extensive network of teachers through the Utah Teacher Fellows. So I was actually part of the first cohort of Utah Teacher Fellows 2017 to 2019, working with the State Board of Education on some research projects. So I'm well connected in the teacher universe, and I will always be looking for teacher input on conversations about what policy is going to look like at the classroom level where we actually have to implement. And I want to hear from teachers across the range of teaching venues. Again, whether it's an online charter, whether it's an in-person charter that's primarily on paper, not using a lot of technology, or whether it's your traditional schools in rural and urban areas that have large populations that are very diverse, or if it's in a rural area with a very, very small population. I want to know what it's going to look like in those classrooms so we can make sure that our policy is broad enough to be appropriate so it can be tailored at the local level.
Thank you. My dad's a Marine, and every time we go out, he inevitably finds a Marine to talk to. Most of the time it's annoying, sometimes it's endearing. I feel similar about educators. In fact, I was sitting there getting my haircut yesterday, and this guy's talking to the stylist, and he's talking, they're making small talk. And he says, yeah, my kids go here. And I couldn't help but speak up. Hi, I'm Matt Hymas. Share your experience, right? Talk to me about things. I love speaking to teachers, the ones who see things. They're the ones who experience things. At the same time, I love talking to parents. They're the ones who see things and experience things, right? So the question being, if I'm elected, how will I talk to teacher, or when will I talk to teacher? How will I collaborate with them? By being friendly and talking to them and visiting them and asking about what's going on. What are they struggling with? Those are the ways that we get communication. And quite frankly, sometimes you got to share some of your own frustrations to get them to open up. I don't know. It's tricky. People are interesting, right? You're all people. I'm a person. Sometimes you got to open up yourself. But I find that it opens up my mind so much, just having those brief conversations to get to know what needs to be done. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, this next one will be first. You'll be first on this one. So I have a couple of questions here about state testing. What should be the goal of state testing? Do you think that goal is being reached? How would you address the concern that schools might be focusing too much on teaching to the test and scores rather than achievement?
Is this my opportunity to vent about state testing?
If you feel so inclined.
If I'm honest with you, there are some state tests that I actually appreciate. As an educator, as a director of a school, I actually like Acadience I think that it's helpful. I get beginning of year reading and math, middle of year and end of year. And to me, that's very helpful. I'll tell you where I really struggle, the RISE test. RISE is still pushing Common Core, and I hate it. And then the USBE just released this report card. There's no letter grade, the report card of all schools. Of course, I look up mine. I want to know where I am. And I think, why do I have to jump through this hoop in order to get good test scores? Because the public, that's what they're going to see. What do your test scores look like? And I look at math as a specific example, because I miss the days when parents could help their kids with math. Those are gone. I'm a math teacher. That's what I started out as. I can't even help my 8th grade daughter with math. Like, what has happened to our society here? And RISE test, in my opinion, this might just be me spouting off, has driven Common Core, has tried to put these 3rd graders to learn logic. And anyway, now I'm rambling. Some tests are good, some are not. Luckily, we have opt-out options for all parents. And so I support that anyway. Thank you.
So Deborah, what should be the goal of state testing? Do you think that goal is currently being reached? And how would you address concerns that schools might focus too much on teaching to the test and the scores rather than achievement?
Okay, so I'm a helicopter pilot, and one of the things I appreciate on my dashboard in the helicopter is we have a bank of lights, and it's advisory lights. This is what's going on, just so you know. And then we have warning lights like, hey, this maybe is a problem. You might need to do something about it. And if testing is giving us information that's actionable, something that we can actually respond to in a meaningful way in a timely manner, then the testing is probably appropriate. But if we're testing for the sake of testing so that we can produce some kind of report card like RISE gives us, then I have a real problem with it, because it's not actionable. You do it at the end of the year. If you can make the kids do it, it's not quality data because you have all the opt-out. So it's not really a good measure of school performance, but we have to do it. So we're going to do it, and it's going to eat into what would have been instructional time. Meanwhile, we also have at the high school level, we have to give the ACT, which takes away an instructional day. We do the ACT Aspire, which takes away an instructional day. We're going to be doing a WIDA test that will be all in one day, taking away an instructional day. So all of this testing that we cannot respond to in a meaningful way is problematic. We're pulling up the daisies to see how the roots are doing so that we know the plants are doing well, and that's not good for the plants. It's not good for the students. It doesn't help us as teachers respond to their needs and differentiate. So we need to dial back on the testing and make sure that it actually helps us respond to student needs. Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing it.
Okay, Deborah, you'll be first on this next one.
Okay.
So state law requires that parents be notified if their child would like to use different pronouns or change the gender they use at school. Some have been concerned that this could pose a danger to some children. How do you feel about that issue? And are you accepting of students designating the name and pronoun they prefer used for them?
So I actually have a personal experience with this. Several years ago, one of my students presented to me that they wanted to go by a different name. And normally I don't have a problem with that. If they want to use a different name, no big deal, fine. And then they said they also wanted to go by the other gender identity. And this was still kind of new. I was like, I don't know. Okay, I'll try. And then I got an email from administration who had been contacted by the parents that said, you will not. So I explained to the student, I'm sorry, I can't. And that student immediately burst into tears, stormed out of the room, demanded a class change, and I did not see them again except in the hallway. So this is a tricky situation. Obviously, we're going to honor parents' wishes and parents' rights, as we should, but parents have to deal with some tricky situations. I also have a cousin with a transgender child, and that child does not feel safe going to school and has all but dropped out because they can't go to the bathroom during the day because of state legislation that has made it very difficult and created a vigilante culture of people like, well, you don't belong in here. And we know that these kinds of students are at highest risk of being assaulted and being bullied, and we're not doing right by all kids right now. So I think there needs to be nuanced adult conversations with parents about these situations and how we're going to best meet their students' needs and keep them safe at school.
Thank you. Matt, so here's the question one more time. State law requires that parents be notified if their child would like to use different pronouns or change the gender they use at school. Some are concerned that this could pose a danger to some children. How do you feel about that? Are you accepting of students designating the name and pronoun they would prefer to have used toward them?
Thank you. I want to recognize that this is a real concern. That this isn't something that's just like, if we ignore it, it will go away. However, I recognize that families have rights. Parents have rights. And if I found out that the school was keeping a secret from me as a parent of this magnitude, I would be livid. There's no excuse for that. The parent is always involved. Now, that doesn't mean you just turn them away and say, deal with it. You bring the parent in, you sit down with them. We do it all the time. And we sit down with the family and we say, hey, Billy, Sophie, whatever, has a concern. We want to see what we can do to help. But it's not our decision. It's your decision. And we value you as that parent and making that decision. And we will do whatever you would like us to do. And then the parent and student can go home. Now, I get, we're always going to point out, oh, the abuse that could happen. And I understand that it's a real concern. But I can't control everything. I have a responsibility. Utah law says that we have a responsibility. And I'm not in a position, nor do I want to be in a position to violate Utah law or the trust of the parent.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Matt, we'll have you start with this next question. So this question talks about a teenager who was having a mental health crisis, and as their parents tried to utilize resources that were available to them, they kind of were passed around from agency or person to person and had a really difficult time finding tangible help for their child. So what do you think we could do to make mental health aid and resources actually readily available and more effective for our students?
There's a limit that the school has. And I've been talking about parents' choice and parents' rights all night. And the school will help. I don't know how this fits in with the USBE, but if this is like an actual experience, don't give up. Continue to seek help where you can get it. It's a real issue. I get it, but we can't ignore it. We can't, like I said, I don't know if the USBE has programs or will create programs. This is one of those things where, in my opinion, the school can assist the parent. And I've had to talk to parents and say, hey, have you tried this place or that place? But I don't have the expertise. And quite frankly, there's nobody in the school that has the expertise to take over in that. But I would say, again, I'm kind of going off here, but don't stop finding help for that child, right? Anyway, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Repeat it.
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
So teens are generally experiencing a lot more mental health challenges today than I remember when I was a child. The world has changed dramatically. You know, social media has amplified a lot of things that weren't issues. COVID made things very difficult for folks being isolated for a period of time. Things are hard. And I think that it's fair that we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge that families need help. It's not just the students. Oftentimes it's the families. If the child is in crisis, oftentimes it's a result of a family that's struggling and is also in crisis. So just today in my US history classrooms, we had the counselors come in and present the Safe UT app, which is something that is available to students at any time, any place. They can just reach out and communicate with someone if they need to talk to someone and they don't have a trusted adult. So that's one avenue. In my school, because we're a large, suburban high school, we do have a social worker on staff who's available to help students and their families connect with resources. We have a school psychologist that's in the building a couple of days a week that's available to help. And we also need to have more and better community partnerships with schools. You know, Magna has a great prevention effort through a coalition. And if we can connect schools and these community coalition efforts, we can address a lot of the problems at the local level, which should be the goal. So I'd love to see an increase in support and encouragement for community partnerships with schools and charters too, not just public schools. It's something that we need to do more of and do better because the prevention efforts that they're involved with are significant and will make a difference for our kids.
Thank you. Okay, Deborah, this one is for you first. And I like this one. How can USBE support alternative high schools, and I would even say educational options for our most needy students?
Well, thank you for that question. I actually taught at an alternative school my first 5 years. I spent 5 years teaching young mothers at the Teen Parent Program out in Granite. And then that program was restructured, so it does not exist in that format now. But it was a remarkable experience working with those young women because they'd had their epiphanies and they realized the value of education. So it's essential that we have alternative school models, whether it's later starts or, you know, octomesters. So you do one class intensively at a time, which is the current Granite model. There are lots of ways to do it that meet kids' needs. And again, policy needs to be broad enough so it can be tailored for the target population and their specific needs. Teen moms have different needs than other populations who have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, right? So the alternative programs need to be tailored to meet the needs of those students wherever they are. And whether, you know, if it's transportation that's an issue, that's something that can be addressed. If it's childcare that's an issue, that's something that can be addressed. But if the legislature is going to dictate that policy, it's not going to go well. And if the state board is going to dictate the policy, it's not going to go well. It needs to be broad policy that encourages support for students who have needs that are not best met in traditional classes.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, do you want me to read that again?
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you. One of the ways in which the USBE can support these alternative schools is first recognizing that they're alternative schools. Too many times we've looked at a list of schools and you look at the bottom and you think, oh, these schools, they need help, right? So again, I don't know how much everybody knows, but there's what's called turnaround schools, right? When you're in the bottom percentage, the USBE steps in and says, hey, you need help and we're going to help you. Well, sometimes these alternative schools, they don't need help. They're doing exactly what they're designed to do. They're designed to take struggling students and not only teach them academics, but teach them life skills at the same time. And then sometimes their graduation rate is a lot lower than others. We should expect that, right? We shouldn't be upset and say, hey, you got a problem. No, you don't have a problem. Bless your heart for being the only group that's willing to do this, right? We should be looking at these schools differently, in my opinion. And I will be honest with you, I believe that the USBE has taken steps. We're not completely there yet, but they have taken steps to recognize the great work that some of these alternative schools are doing. And I think that needs to happen in order to best support these schools and these families.
One more thing on that.
Sure.
This is an area where I want to celebrate charters because charters are supposed to have a unique, specific mission. And there are several charters that are catering to students who have specific needs, right? So Spectrum Academy does a great job working with students who have autism. And I've had autistic students in my classroom, and when they're high functioning, they do great. But the ones that really struggle, that do better with teachers who are trained specifically to work with them as a special population, that's fantastic. And I love charters that do that. I'm very grateful for them.
Thank you so much. Okay, next question. And Matt, it's your turn first. Okay. Okay. Oh, you guys, I feel like we've done a lot of questions tonight. Okay. Since COVID, schools have seen a significant rise in chronic absenteeism, and subsequently students are often struggling to reach proficiency. What are possible tools that USBE could employ to combat chronic absenteeism?
So the USBE has been doing trainings for LEAs, offering resources. They've made different things available to hire people to go help with absenteeism. But can I just speak? So those are some of the things that the USBE has done. Can I just speak in general though? And this kind of falls underneath that mission and vision of the USBE in academic excellence. Admittedly, I've kept my kids home when they say, hey, Dad, all we have is blank, right? I know I'm a bad person, but I think it's true. I think that we make a judgment call every day with our kids, and we need to have value in our schools. We need to say, you can't afford to miss. I would tell my students, do not miss my math class. You can't afford it. Come sick. I'll teach you. You will gain knowledge. You'll be better for it. Obviously, it didn't work, but that's what I wanted to impress the importance of our education on them. And then families. We really need to help families not remember, but something changed during that time away, and something changed in my mind. And I had to refocus back on my priorities. And I think for some families, there's been other priorities that have taken a step up. Not to say that public ed is out of the way, but I've seen it in my school and classes. Sometimes we need to remember how important education is and get those kids back into class.
Okay, Deborah.
Thank you. So the data that just came out from USBE shows that attendance has actually started improving a little bit more, which is a really great sign, but it's definitely down. And I see that in my classroom. We have not fully recovered from the COVID period. And it's hard because we can't teach students that aren't there. As far as what the state board can do, there's not a lot, because state board sets general policy and has general supervision, but the action hits, the rubber hits the road at the school level. And so it's what state law supports are there. I would love to see truancy come back and be a thing, so we can support the families who need a little bit more encouragement to encourage their students to come when they should. I know from conversations that I've had that sometimes students aren't coming because they're working. And sometimes they're not coming because they're babysitting younger siblings while their parents are working. So there are larger conversations to be had about the economy and why families are struggling and need, perhaps teens to take care of their younger siblings because parents working multiple jobs still can't make ends meet. That is a real problem. But we also need to help parents understand the importance of their kids being in school. And we need to make sure that students absolutely are getting value from the time that they're spending in our school building, which goes back to administrators, making sure that they're supporting effective policies and supporting effective teaching. And if that's a problem, then the administrators are the ones that need to deal with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes and our hour will be up. So even though I still have lots of questions, I appreciate today's in-person audience and also the online audience for submitting those questions, but we are not going to get to all the things, unfortunately. But we're going to give both candidates the opportunity to do a 1-minute closing statement and kind of sum up what they would like to talk about. And then we would encourage each of you, both those online at home and those here in the audience, to reach out to the candidates directly if you have any other questions that you would really like to have answered. So I believe that we decided that Matt would be first.
Thank you. And if you want to stick around, I can answer questions if you have them. I'm happy to do so. I want to thank the organization for putting this on. I want to thank you for being here. I recognize that you chose this over the vice president debate tonight, right? 2 exciting options and you chose this one. Wonderful. So glad to have you. I want to just let you know, I've seen a lot in education. I went from math teacher to junior high principal. I've coached baseball. I've coached basketball, assistant secondary director, high school director. I'm currently the executive director of 2 charter schools. Nothing compares to any of that when I look at my role as a parent of students in the public education system. I understand the value of education. I will continue to push that academic excellence because I know how important it is to see a confident reader, a confident learner, and somebody who can think critically. Vote for me, Matt Hymas. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you got it. All right. Thank you so much. So I'm really grateful for everyone who's come tonight and those of you who are watching online, whether it's tonight or later. I'm grateful for the involved parents who really care about their students' education and legislators who really care about education and have spent time in our classrooms over the last week. I'm grateful for everyone who truly does care about education and acts on it. I live and breathe school every day. I'm passionate about teaching. I'm passionate about learning and serving. My ROTC model at BYU was service first, and I've lived my life by that ever since. And since I have some military experience, I've got the leadership skills to get things done and to have the serious conversations about things that people are worried about, not just in the classroom, but also school safety conversations and guns and all of those things. And as a veteran, people will take me seriously when we engage in those conversations. I'm really excited to work together to improve education for all of our students across Utah. And if you have follow-up questions, I hope that you'll give me a call. My number is 385-236-4096. And the folks watching can pause and rewind that. I'll give it to anybody here who wants to talk to me after. But again, I'm Deborah Gatrell, and I hope to earn your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending our debate for USBE 10 tonight. Our next debate is tomorrow night with candidates, gosh, I can't remember what seat it is. Candidates Cole Kelly and Jason Allen, who I don't remember the number of the seat, but they cover Orem, and then out to Heber, and then all the way out to Vernal. That's the area that they cover, but I can't remember the number. Sorry about that. But I really want to thank Principal Diaz and Wallace Stegner Academy. This is their West Valley City campus. Thank you for hosting us tonight and being willing to let us meet here. And especially thank you to both our candidates, Matt Hymas and Deborah Gatrell, for being willing to come and answer questions tonight. And we appreciate both of you for your willingness to run and to make a difference in education in the state of Utah. So thank you. Good night.